The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report Mega Playoff Podcast, Part 2. If you missed Part 1, check it out on ESPN.com or iTunes. Cousin Sal and Aaron Schatz. Here's Part 2. Chad Millman coming up in a little bit. But right now, our hero, the decade of Lombardi himself, on the Subway Fresh Tech Hotline. Mike Lombardi, what's happening?
Not much. I love the games, Bill. You got to love the football.
All right. Don't bury the lead here. But since the last time we talked to you, all of a sudden you got thrown into that Niners GM thing, and we're like one of the final two candidates. What happened there?
Well, it's partly the power of your persuasive ability, I think, that got me in the door. I had a great talk with Jed York. I flew out there, spent some time with him. You know, I'm a huge Jim Harbaugh fan. I'm a huge Harbaugh family fan, and I think the fit was right. On the surface for me and Jim, but I don't think the fit was right for the owner because I think he wanted to bring his own guy in. He had a guy in mind that he wanted in that job from the beginning before the job even opened up. It really wasn't opened. And so, I think that's the way the course of action went. But I'm fully behind Jim, support him, the organization. I think it's nice to have an opportunity to talk to an owner, but it really wasn't a job opening. I think the job was already filled.
Is it, Harbaugh took some heat last week for entertaining all these different offers, all that stuff. Was he really entertaining that many offers? It seems like it was the Niners all the way here.
Well, no, I think, the morning of the decision, if you want to call it the decision, he basically, decision 2, if you will, he basically everybody thought he was going back to Stanford. So I think he was really torn. I think the difference between this one, people thought Michigan was in. I don't think Jim wanted to go to another college and then leave for the pros. Jim's an extremely competitive guy, so the highest level of competition is always going to be enticing to him. The Niners were there. I don't know if Miami really was in the right mix, the right kind of situation for him, and I think it took him a long time to work through the process of San Francisco, what he was comfortable with, and then once he got to that point, I think he made the decision.
Yeah. Interesting job, because they do have some talent, and you could argue that their coaching staff was so inferior last year that it really crippled them. They're in a really, really super easy division. They're going to have number 7 pick. Their owner seems like he's willing to spend some money, assuming the lockout doesn't totally change everything. I mean, that's a job where you can go in right away, right?
You would think so, but there's a problem down the road. It's in the middle of the state. It's called in the middle of the country. It's called Sam Bradford in St. Louis, and that's what's got to worry you. And that's what, if you're in San Francisco, you've got to wake up every morning figuring out how we're going to get a quarterback and how we're going to improve this roster. Because I've always never been a part of these teams that here, and you can appreciate this being a Patriot fan. The days when the Patriots were always a talented team and underachieved, I never really buy into this. I think that certainly they were poorly coached, but I think there's some areas that the San Francisco 49ers have to strengthen besides just quarterback. And Sam Bradford has really demonstrated in just 1 year how good he can become, and I think that's got to be the concern for all Niner fans.
Were you surprised that the Miami thing, he flies across country, whatever, it doesn't work out, and then all of a sudden gives Sperano an extension?
Only in the NFL can those kind of things happen. I mean, it's kind of interesting how you basically, Al Davis does it every year, only he kind of has a different way about doing it. He doesn't renew your option for a couple days, and then it goes through that process. But, look, it's a very difficult job to have, being the head coach of any organization, and I think that the owner, especially a new owner who didn't hire you, always has a right to do whatever he wants. It would have been a lot better if he would have made that decision. Going into the game on Sunday against the Patriots, Tony Sperano was fine. I think the collapse of that game may cause some problems and really caused all these interest in other people.
Well, I think we learned that Week 17 doesn't matter when you're talking about who's in jeopardy, because the Raiders could not have played better in Week 17. They fire the coach. And then Miami, total stink bomb. They bring the coach back and extend him. I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, the Raiders, if you're trying to put logic into an illogical world, I caution you before doing that, please.
Did your friend Jim Harbaugh ask you whether he should consider the Raiders job?
Oh, we've had numerous discussions about a lot of NFL teams before he took them, so I could say that I don't think he was, I think he has respect for that being the first place of employment in the NFL in terms of the coaching side. I just don't think that would have been the right situation for him.
Let's talk about
is that politically correct?
It was good, but I think we can read between the lines.
Okay.
I thought the coaching was really interesting in round one. I want to talk about that really quick. Jim Caldwell first.
I can't explain it. I really can't. I'm watching the tape right now here at NFL Films, and I don't understand, the whole process. I think, we talked about the Jets really being able to defend them and really making it hard for Peyton to make throws. And, they have 4 third-and-ones that they can't convert in the game. Never put a lead back in there. They don't do anything to really kind of spruce up their third down package. And those third downs really are what created them to have to punt the ball and give the ball away. And the more plays their defense had to play, eventually you knew they were going to lose. I mean, in the second half, the Colts defense never stopped the Jets. It was Sanchez, kind of made the throw over. I think it was Santonio Holmes. It was a high throw. Holmes should have caught it. Caught many easier balls than that. Then he overthrows Braylon Edwards on the deep pass. Other than that, the second half was never even close to stopping the Jets offensively. So, when the Colts can't win with their offense, they can't win, period.
Do you see a coaching change there possibly?
I don't think so. I think that the guy goes to the Super Bowl last year, and then he has this meltdown here. Why he calls the timeout, I have no idea. I think there's some concern. I think when you look at this roster, now really, if you're objective and you look at the roster, and I know Mike Holmgren stood before the Cleveland media and said his team should have won more than 5 games, and I don't know how they could have. As much as I'm not thinking that Eric Mangini's a great head coach, I wouldn't know how that Browns team could win more than 5. That being said, I don't know how the Colts win if it wasn't for number 18 behind center. I think they could have the first or second pick of the draft based on their talent level of their team.
Yeah, they were not good. And
they're terrible.
And ironically, Sanchez kept them in the game for as long as he possibly could.
I mean, it's hilarious. Sanchez can't throw the ball accurately at all. He's below 60%. He's 54% completion. And I get zillions of tweets from people saying, you're too hard on the guy. The guy's won 3 playoff games. He hasn't won 3. They've been carrying him through these games. I mean, even that game last week, I mean, if Peyton was back, look, when they punted the ball and he overthrows Braylon Edwards, had that been a Peyton with a good team, he would have seen the ball back again.
Yeah. So Bill Belichick goes into work Sunday at about, I'm guessing, 5:40 a.m. and he knows he's playing the Jets. What is he thinking right now?
Well, I think he's always going to think in terms of how Rex Ryan thinks or his opponent thinks. So he's going to put himself in those shoes. And then he understands what they do offensively and defensively so well that in his mindset, he says, I think they're going to come in here and play us X, Y, and Z. And then he starts a game plan based on what he believes they'll do. Now, they changed their game plan up against Peyton Manning. They played a little bit different coverages. They realize now that everybody knows in the National Football League their blitz scheme can't get there consistently. So they've backed away from the blitzes, and they're going to try to make you work the ball down the field a little bit. I think that's going to be a little bit more of an approach. I think he's going to try to play a little more different coverages to create some confusion and not allow those big plays on picks and other kind of inside routes to get caught up with them. So I think Rex Ryan's going to change. I think the key what Belichick's trying to do is figure out what that change will actually be.
The way Rex Ryan defended Peyton in Saturday night's game was basically what Belichick used to do to Peyton, right? Isn't it the exact same thing?
No, pretty much in his style, in his flair. He was going to say, look, I'm not going to give you the big play. I'm going to make sure I tackle the check down runners. I'm not going to just let you dump the ball off to Joseph Adai and run for 15 yards. And, I'm going to keep the seams from happening. And I'm not going to there's no pass interference penalties you're going to get because I'm going to try to reduce the amount of man-to-man I have to play. I'm going to still place him because it's my signature. But I think he did a nice job of diversifying his account.
Back to coaching. Kansas City's coaching staff. What happened in the second half there?
Well, look, Kansas City is really a limited football team. They're one-dimensional, and when the dimension gets taken away, you have to rely on what I call scheme plays, which are coach-em-up plays, which is we design them. If we get the right coverage, we call the right play against the right coverage, it works. Well, those scheme plays, you kind of run out of those, and the Chiefs ran out of them in the second quarter because they don't have anybody to go throw the ball to. They couldn't get the ball to Milwaukee. They couldn't get the ball to Bo. Bo was never been. I know he has all these touchdowns, but Bo's really a number 2 receiver on just an average team. He's not a number one receiver. He can't escape from man coverage. He can't separate. He's got no real quickness. He's good in the red zone because of his size and his ability to catch the ball, but just in terms of winning the one-on-one matchups, he can't do it. So Baltimore, the longer the game went, the more the scheme plays couldn't become effective. And then once Jamal Charles, he couldn't make a play running the football. They can't run it outside. They can't run it inside. Really, the offense came down to nothing, and then Baltimore, had they had a good offense that day, the game would have been over in the second quarter.
See, I felt like the Chiefs gave up on the running game a little bit too early. And although at the same time, I don't feel like they should have run on 4th and 1. The sweep play was terrible. But it seemed like Charles was faster than Baltimore's front seven, and that was the only real advantage they have. Hey, maybe, I don't know. I thought they should.
He was the only player on the field that could win the game for Kansas City, clearly. And,
I would have put it in his
how
hands.
you get him the football, and look, it never really works out. I know I heard everybody say, well, Charlie Weiss went to the Super Bowl in 2006 with the year of 2004 when he was at Notre Dame, when he was going to Notre Dame. But remember, you got Tom Brady behind center, and you also had Josh McDaniels as a quarterback coach. So, he could be out of the office for a little bit. I think Charlie, this whole thing was a problem, and it was going to be tough because there really wasn't a lot of stability plays and there wasn't a foundation of an offense for Kansas City if you took the running game away.
So, Ravens-Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Toss-up. Basically a toss-up, right? It's going to be a 3-point game.
I think Pittsburgh has really become the team now because their receivers have changed so dramatically. I mean, Mike Wallace is so good, and I think Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders are starting to come along. I think the only way Baltimore can win the game is they have to have their best game in the defensive line. They've got to really be able to pressure Roethlisberger and create some havoc for him. I really think Baltimore's offense is going to struggle. Baltimore's offense is kind of pedestrian. Ray Rice is fabulous, and after that, everybody's slow and kind of just tagging along. I know Todd Heap had a good game last week, but really he won't have that kind of game this week. It'll be taken away from him. I just don't see Baltimore's offense having explosive plays in it, and you need explosive plays to beat Pittsburgh.
And it doesn't seem like they have a single receiver who can break away from anybody.
No, I don't think they have a receiver that can get open. Really, in the schoolyard, they're slow. And then when you watch them on tape, they're even slower than you think they are watching the game live on television. They just can't separate. And I thought Kansas City did a bad job, especially inside with their defensive tackles of rushing the quarterback, because if you need to get in Flacco's face, you need to push the pocket, and I think they ran past the quarterback too often. I think it would have helped them, especially on third down. Their rush wasn't coordinated well enough to really stop Flacco on third down.
So, do you like? Well, let me phrase it this way: Baltimore's front seven. Do you like that more than you dislike Pittsburgh's offensive line?
I like Baltimore's front seven a lot more than I like Pittsburgh's offensive line.
No, I mean dislike.
Dislike, yeah, I like them a lot more than I dislike Pittsburgh.
Because we don't like Pittsburgh's offensive line.
Don't like them at all, and I think it's going to. This is the only way Pittsburgh loses the game, and it's how they lost to the Jets. They don't block a guy in the A gap, and they miss assignment. They get the safety, they lose the game. I mean, when the season is over, if Pittsburgh doesn't win or get to the conference championship game, they're going to come back and say we got to fix the line. Just like Indianapolis today. Bill Polian said after the Super Bowl, the offensive line cost me a Super Bowl. Today he's saying the same thing. This offensive line cost me a chance at advancing in the playoffs. You got to fix the problems.
Is it fair to say that next Monday, assuming Pittsburgh wins, we'll be saying, wow, that was one of the best Ben Roethlisberger games in a while. He was under pressure for 4 quarters. He made every play. That guy's great.
And we're also going to say Mike Wallace has got to be one of the top 5 receivers in the league when this is all said and done. Yeah, I think, and that's where they gain the advantage, because Baltimore's secondary, Josh Wilson is playing at a high level right now. He's playing really good for them in the secondary. Their coverage is really well coached. Their scheme, Ed Reed has looked like there's 2 Ed Reeds out there sometimes. I mean, he does things that I've never seen before. So it's not going to be easy for Pittsburgh to really move the ball down the field. They'll make mistakes. Look, when you have a bad offensive line, the longer the drive, the line's going to have to show up. It's what happened in New Orleans on Saturday. John Stinchcomb breaks down. Eventually, if New Orleans can't make a big play, Stinchcomb's going to cost them a drive, and that's what happened.
Let's talk about the NFC. Sean Payton versus Pete Carroll.
Wow.
Can we say that Pete Carroll spanked Sean Payton in this game?
Well, I don't know if he spanked him. I think what Pete Carroll did is made a good adjustment. He came into the game, and it was if you get into a cover 3 game against Sean Payton, you're going to lose. And really, what Pete Carroll wants to do is run his zone blitzes. He wants to play his coverages behind him, and it's perfect. And Sean Payton's offense is tailored against that. And so he made the adjustment in the second quarter. He said, look, we're just going to play some cover two. We're going to make him work the ball. And if he thinks he can run the ball, he loses running backs. He can't run the ball on us. Doesn't have a running back on the roster, really, because he loses Bush. Then he loses Julius Jones. So this is going on. He can't really run the football. So let's make him work the ball down the field. And the only way we'll lose this game is if we give up a big play. Keep the ball in front of us, tackle well, and let's go forward. And I thought he did a great job of making that adjustment. And that's really what you have to do on playoff weekend. You got to make those adjustments as you're watching the game go on out there. And I think he did. Now, I think really the key, the guy that deserves a ton of credit is Seattle's offensive coordinator, Jeremy Bates, because I think what he did was he matched Sean Payton in what I call the CFL offense. When Sean Payton's in rhythm, he's getting first downs on two calls. The CFL, you got to get a first down on 2 downs. And that's what he did. And then Jeremy Bates realizing, I can't be in second and long. I can't be in third and long. I can't protect long enough. He got into that CFL mode, and he was getting first downs in 2 downs, and he was keeping his team out of third and long, 3rd and 8. Now, he had to convert a few of them, but he kept the rhythm of the game going, and it made some big plays. And I think they matched them. They beat New Orleans at their game, which is fast break offense.
Jeremy Bates, can we say that he is developed now as a possible head coaching candidate or no?
No, I think he's obviously a little young. I mean, look, they have one of the ranking, when you look at their offenses, they have no strengths. I mean, they really don't. I mean, the Marshawn Lynch run, everybody's been waiting for that run since he left Cal. I saw him do it at Oakland Tech, and I haven't seen him do it since.
Right.
So, I think Jeremy's a really bright young coach. I think if, he's got a great background, worked for Mike Shanahan, worked for John Gruden, so he's got 2 systems. I think he's done a nice job calling plays, especially at the game, and keeping Greg Williams, who Fred Palermo would never eat at his restaurant because it's got way too much on the menu, just kept him off guard the whole game.
Greg Williams is terrible. I didn't understand why they would just send the house. Try to knock Hasselbeck down. Make it, he's old, he's hurt, he's banged up. Just hit that guy.
He was not going to get up, but they had so much stuff going on defense. It looked like he was skittish and he never got control of the game. And then all of a sudden, once the bullets start flying and the big plays happen, then I think he really got skittish and it really became a problem. And a lot of it goes back to, look, every fan at home sitting there saying, if you're a Saint fan, you're saying, how do we play such good defense against the Atlanta Falcons, who are one of the best offenses in the league, and we go out to Cincinnati and we go to Seattle and we can't hold them to under 30. And the reality of it is if he knows the defense, if he knows the offense, he can hone his defense in and really shut it down. But when he doesn't really know, then he plays battleship football, which is, I'm going to call this one, oh shoot, let's try this. Oh shoot, let's try that. The Fred Palermo menu, you know. K5 miss, G3 hit, all that stuff. The next thing you know, he's giving up big plays. That's what happened in Cincinnati. That's what happened in Seattle. And I think that's really what was the cause of New Orleans' demise.
I didn't think they coached a very good game at all. And because the media loves Sean Payton and he's had some success, I thought he got a free ride in that game.
Well, I think he knows. I think he's sitting at his desk today saying, we did not do a good job.
Well, what about the bloop kicks? How bad were the bloop kicks?
Yeah, the kicking games were bad. I mean, basically, I think one thing about good coaches, and I think this is really important, just like if I did something on TV, and of course, if I make a spelling mistake here, people can't wait to send it to you. You got to be open to criticism. And I think Sean's sitting in his office today saying, we didn't do a really good job of managing the game from a defensive and a special team aspect. And then when he lost his running backs, I don't know what else he could have done. And I think the other thing Sean's got to do is he's got to say, look, I've seen enough of this right tackle. I know I won a Super Bowl with him, but he's cost me enough games. I've got to find a better right tackle.
Well, I just looked at my phone. Adam Schefter just tweeted that the Saints said the Broncos have requested permission to interview Greg Williams for their job. Good luck with that, Broncos.
Did they watch the game on Sunday?
Apparently not. Apparently John Elway was playing golf that day. Hey, Seahawks-Bears. Do you give the Seahawks any chance in this game?
I didn't give them any chance last week. I mean, I don't see how they can block them. They're on the road, bad teams on the road. Look, the crowd noise was deafening there in Seattle, and it certainly played a part. But I mean, Seattle was the only home team to win. I never thought that was going to happen. I liked the 4 road teams this past weekend, and look, home teams are 13 and 15 going back to 2004 this past weekend. So,
right.
It can be done, but I don't know how Seattle goes into Chicago without really a strength under their belt. They really can't run it. They can only throw it. It'll be a game like the Rams. And against Chicago, you're going to have to work the ball down the field consistently, and I don't know if he can get into his CFL offense and get first downs on 2 calls. So I think it's going to be a really hard game for him, unless they can blitz Cutler and he makes mistakes and they fumble the ball and the weather's bad. There's a lot of intangibles going on.
Well, they have one thing on in their favor is that they've beaten them this year.
Yeah,
so they have that.
Yep.
So I demand that this week you watch a tape of that game.
I will watch. That's why I'm here. I'm going to watch all 4. I'm going to watch Seattle because I want to see how they actually did it. I still can't believe that they won that game. And even when New Orleans scored late, I thought Seattle was going to come back until Marshawn Lynch all of a sudden looked like unbelievable runner. I mean, even in a Madden game, a guy doesn't run like that, does he?
I know. No, it's crazy. But I think, looking ahead, the one thing to remember from that game is they gave up 36 points to the Saints. Right. And it could have been 38 if they had gotten the 2-point. But, now they had to score 41 to win at home. Now they're going on the road against a much, much, much better defense.
Yeah, I think Chicago's got to feel like we not that, and plus Lovie Smith's at full advantage now because his team lost, so he'll have his team full attention. They can't take Seattle lightly because he can just sit there and watch the game of the last time they played, which I'll do this week, and say, hey, we didn't play good this week. Last time we played them, here's why, and you got the team's attention. I think the losing really helps them.
Is it fair to say that Chicago can basically emulate what the Saints offense did in that game?
Oh yeah, clearly.
Because they have multiple receivers, they like to throw. They like to throw deep. They like to throw. I mean, it just seems like they could do that. Hey, your phone.
I think they can do that, and I also think they can protect because remember, Chicago's got a bad field. So it'll hurt Seattle's pass rush. Seattle doesn't have any size or girth to their defensive front. It's really not a good matchup for Seattle. I know they won the game the first time. The field's a little sloppier. It's not going to play to their advantage. And then Mike Martz has got the ability to do all these different things. He could take what Sean Payton did and add to it. I think it really works to his favor. Falcons,
Packers quickly. The public likes the Packers. Packers only getting 2 points.
I love the Packers. I think the if Mike McCarthy would have not stopped trying to score in the fourth quarter, I don't think that game comes down to Michael Vick's interception.
I agree.
I think you got the best player in football, maybe arguably right now, other than Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He's really hot. He's playing good. Your offense is running the ball well. You got a balanced attack. I don't know why he pulled back. I mean, he really let Philadelphia set him up for the kill. And today, this conversation would be all about Mike McCarthy's bad game management had Michael Vick not thrown the interception. Because I think he really he took his foot off the pedal, and I think he hurt his football team. He needs to keep scoring. His best defense is his offense because when he plays with the lead and he plays when they're out in front, the defenses become more effective and the Capers can take more chances. But what happened in that game is the game started to narrow down, and then Capers couldn't do what he needed to do. It became a much difficult game to call for Capers, and he was holding on at the end. He really was.
Well, you've become my go-to guy as I'm watching a game whenever there's an inexplicable coaching decision or bad clock management, because I know nobody enjoys it as much as I do, except for you.
Yeah, this is who wins games. I think to me, this weekend, divisional weekend, is about, again, it's all about adjustments and it's all about how you see the game going. That's the key. And what happened in Philadelphia on Sunday, the Eagles it took them a while to adjust to the game, and then when they did adjust, they never did adjust, but Capers started blitzing more, which is what the Eagles thought they were going to do, and that's when the Eagles started to move the ball.
And the Packer fans are defending McCarthy, and rightfully so. He's done a good job. They've had a lot of injuries, but the bottom line is it's the playoffs, and you're up 14-0. The Eagles are about to kick a field goal at the end of the first half with like 1:50 left. He let all 40 seconds run off the clock, never called timeout. Now they get the ball, 1:10. They're near midfield. So you can't leave points on the board like that. And then the fourth quarter, same thing. They go away from Rodgers. And really, if Vic throws a better ball in that pseudo Hail Mary to white guy number 15 that last
Riley
weekend, Riley Cooper, they could have lost that game. They totally outplayed Philadelphia. It was no contest.
Yeah, I mean, and I just thought he took his foot off the gas, and I think it made a mistake. And I understand why the Packer fans are sick, because I think Mike did a great job. Plus, he did a great job of running the football. But there's a time when you have the best player really on the field, Aaron Rodgers, put the ball in his hands and don't make it 3rd and 10. Make it a little easier. Like, look, Sean Payton did a great thing on the goal line. When he got the ball down the goal line, and this is why he's such a great play caller, he ran the 3rd down play on 1st down. So he ran the fake boot, he ran the fake lead, and then with the boot, and he gets the touchdown. Most people call it on 3rd down when everybody's expecting it. Sean Payton calls it on 1st down when nobody's expecting it. And that's what Green Bay needed to do, is run the unexpected plays on the early downs. Don't drop them back to throw on 3rd and 8 and get sacked when the game's on the line. Your offense needs to keep the defense off the field in playoff time, because if the games are too close, and if a tip ball, what happens if you get a pass interference in the end zone on that play?
So you don't like Atlanta that much this week, then?
I like Atlanta. Atlanta beat Green Bay there. They beat them at home, so they know how to play them. But the one thing I think Atlanta's going to have trouble doing in this game is they'll have trouble matching up against Green Bay, especially with their defense. I think Atlanta's corners are going to come into play here. Now, I know Brett Grimes has played better. Dante Robinson's going to have to play his best game. These Green Bay receivers are really tough to cover man-to-man for the entire game. They're tough to cover against zone. I like quarterbacks and defense this time of the year, and I think Aaron Rodgers and their defense is playing well. I still like Atlanta, and I think the next weekend, if Atlanta wins the game, they'll be favored in my mind because they'll have the better quarterback and the better defense.
Yeah, as a Patriot fan, this couldn't have worked out better so far, because we got rid of Peyton Manning, and I don't care how bad that Colts team is. I still did not want to see him at any point in the playoffs.
Yeah.
We have Sanchez coming to Foxborough in round 2, and he's either hurt or he's having a confidence issue, because he threw 15 terrible passes last week, and that's the kind of guy I want to come into Foxborough. Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
In perfect conditions. Might I add,
right.
Perfect conditions. Now,
right.
I don't think there's going to be perfect conditions in Foxborough next week. I just have a hunch.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh are going to beat the living hell out of each other, and I hope that game goes into 3 overtimes and that people are getting carried off like the end of rollerball. And then on the other side, Philly's out. Green Bay has to go to Atlanta, and in Green Bay's, we both agree, is the most dangerous team in the NFC. Now they're going into Atlanta, loud noise, Atlanta's rested. That's a game that, even though Green Bay has more talent, I think they could blow. And all of a sudden now we could be looking at Atlanta versus Chicago or Atlanta versus Seattle in the NFC Championship game. The Pats will be favored by 8 or 9 against Atlanta and double digits against Seattle and Chicago, I think.
Yeah, the only team I think right now that could beat New England in a Super Bowl would be, if New England were able to get there, would be Green Bay.
And for AFC, Baltimore is the team they don't want to see, right?
Well, the way Baltimore's offense is so slow and sluggish, I think Baltimore presents the most challenges, especially defensively, because their secondary is playing so much better. But I think when what the Jets have to do is going to be difficult. I'd like to run a stat, because I had a rule being in Cleveland for so many years and competing against the Steelers. Anytime you play the Steelers, the next week you could never win. Your body was too beat up to really come back and fight another fight. So to me, the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game, whoever wins, they still might end up being the loser anyway.
Joe, who is the guy who could vault his career to another level this week out of anybody who's playing?
Well, I think obviously Flacco, because if he can make those throws on the outside quadrant, which you have to make against Pittsburgh, and he can do it, but they're going to have to be tight throws because they have no skill, they have no explosive plays at receiver. It's going to be tough for him, and he's going to be able to withstand the punishment and hang in there. He's the only quarterback in NFL history to make playoff games 3 years in a row. That's pretty remarkable for him. So, he's obviously been able to make certain plays. I thought he played really well at times on Sunday. I think he's the one guy who can jumpstart his career along with Matt Ryan.
Did you think he narrowed the menu down? Maybe he got rid of the clam chowder and the scrod?
I think that, from what I was told, Baltimore cleaned up the menu a little bit. But look, Baltimore's main dish, the soup du jour, everything on the menu of Baltimore's get the ball to Ray Rice. He's the only guy that can make a play. They're throwing checkdowns to Ray Rice on 3rd and 12, and he gets 15 yards.
Yeah. Well, Heap was great for them, but I think the Pittsburgh's going to take Heap out of that game.
Yeah, plus I think Pittsburgh's blitz package will be a little bit better than what Kansas City did against them, so the ball's going to come out. When you blitz, I hate blitzes from depth. And if you saw what Kansas City was doing yesterday, they were bringing their safeties from the field in. And even though it looks good on a piece of paper, by the time the guy gets to the quarterback, he still has time to throw the football. You never blitz from depth against Peyton Manning. Kansas City tried to do it in 92 or early in his career when I forget who was the coach at Kansas City at the time. It might have been Vermeil when he was there, and they just torched him. He just could, blitzes from depth. Greg Robinson might have been the defense coordinator at that time, and it just kills him.
Mike Lombardi, You didn't get the Niners job. I'm still wiping my tears, but at some point it's going to happen. In the meantime, we're happy to have you on the podcast.
And I couldn't have a better campaign manager. I can't thank you enough for all your efforts and all the great tweets I get from all the 49ers fans. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks,
Bill.
All right, batting cleanup, as always, our Vegas guy from ESPN, the magazine, ESPN.com's The Insider, our friend Chad Millman. What's happening?
How are you?
Get ready to hear the word public about 1,000 times because the Packers are only getting 2 points. What does that mean, Chad Millman?
Well, it means they're expecting a lot of money on the Packers, and what the public teams are, as we've discussed in the past, these are the teams that come Sunday or Saturday in this case. These are where the amateur bettors like to put their money. They're teams that are very popular. They are teams that get a lot of national attention. Historically, it has been the Packers and the Bears and the Cowboys and the Steelers. That's going back decades. The last decade or so, decade and a half, you've added the Colts and you've added the Patriots. And the Ravens, to a certain extent as well, have sort of come into that mix. So what's interesting is you've got Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Bookmakers I've spoken to are very much expecting the money from the public to come in on Pittsburgh. And it's doing interesting things to the line, which I'm sure we'll get to. And then also the Packers. There's going to be money coming in on the Packers because they're a public team. They have a history as a public team, and they've been playing so freaking well. And then they had that huge high-profile win against the Eagles. Then you got the Bears, which are also a public team, and you got the Pats playing the Jets. So it's public all over.
Well, we saw the public thing happen last week with the Saints line, which we all could admit was 2 points too high, and yet I still took the Saints. I couldn't go to war with Matt Hasselbeck. They fall down 10-0, and I'm thinking I made a great choice. I couldn't be happier where I am right now, and then the Seahawks put up 41.
Well, there were so many scenarios in which that could have been a scary outcome beyond the way it ended. It ended, I think it closed at 10, but it was at 10.5 for most of the week, and you and I thought it might actually get up to 11 or 12.
Then the running backs got hurt. We did the podcast on Monday,
right.
And then Chris Ivory went out, Pierre Thomas.
Exactly. The running backs got hurt, and that changed everything. And also, handicapping is a multi-pronged approach to examining these games. So it's not just about individual matchups and who's getting hurt. A lot of these guys spend a lot of time reading up on every single thing that is said by coaches on both sides of the ball. And certainly I know a lot of handicappers who have the Twitter feeds of every beat writer for every single team. And they're constantly at their desk for 12 to 15 hours, and they are looking at all this information that is coming in, and they try to glean as much as they can from whatever coaches are saying. And I think a lot of guys started to feel Hasselbeck is feeling confident as the week goes on. Pete Carroll is coaching these guys up and making them believe. They started to buy into sort of the Carroll motivational tactics, and all of a sudden they started thinking, at home, it could be a rainy afternoon, the Saints don't have their running backs. That 10.5 got to 10 by game time, and there were a lot of sharps I know who were taking the Seahawks in that game.
And the money line was just as enticing, right?
Yeah, I think it was 4.5 at that point. So,
yeah.
I was getting a lot of emails on late Friday, early Saturday saying, I can't believe I'm not taking this money line. I'm going to go get it right now because it just seems so appealing.
And I think a few people, and I know I have two friends who did it, they parlayed the Saints money line with the Jets money line on Saturday, which was I think 9-1 combined.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's one of those scenarios where, and this is why I love bets like that, because you just look at it and you go, think about it, 1 out of every 9 times could that happen? Yeah. Right. Why not? The Saints could blow, the Seahawks are a team that they either get blown out or they win.
Wait,
yeah,
you said they took the Saints money line. You meant they took the Seahawks money line.
The Seahawks money line, I'm sorry. So
okay.
Seahawks money line, Jets money line, plus 450 for the Seahawks, plus I think 140 or something for the Jets.
How much did they win?
Whatever 9-1 odds were.
Well, what did they put down?
That I don't know. That's like asking about penis size.
See, in New York, we ask about that all the time.
If you're going to volunteer that information, I like it, but I never want to know how much somebody won.
Oh, to me, it's like asking about how much did your apartment cost. It's a point of pride.
All right. Maybe it's an LA thing.
If somebody's going to say, "Oh yeah, I got the Seahawks and the Jets 9-1 on the money line," then they're begging you to say, "What did you put down?"
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this much: Seahawks, I think, are plus 350 this weekend or plus 400, something like that. They jacked down the money line a little bit after what happened last week.
Yeah.
But if you tease that money line with the Pats money line, and then whoever you think is going to cover in the Ravens game and the Falcons game, it's like 18-1.
I'm glad you're mentioning teasers today.
No, parlays, not teasers.
Oh, well, you just said tease, and
I meant parlay. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you did that, though.
Yeah, okay.
Because a lot of what people have been talking about the last 24 hours, and again, let's talk about sort of the multi-pronged approach to handicapping, right? Because sometimes it's about these guys getting information, sometimes it's about these guys doing matchups and examining statistics, and a lot of times, and more often than not, especially in the playoffs, at this particular juncture of the week, it's about finding opportunities in the sports betting market. And this is a very inefficient market right now. So you've got what that means is that sports books are all rushing to put up their numbers, okay? And normally there'll be 4 or 5 books that put their numbers up, say Sunday afternoon to Sunday night, and then by Monday, everyone has put their numbers up and all the numbers are the same. With the playoffs, there's so few games, guys put them up right away and they're looking to get more action right away. You're seeing these numbers, and it's interesting, there's some places that have Atlanta at 2, and some places that have Atlanta at 1.5. And what you're seeing is differences in the juice that you're paying on those numbers. And part of that is teaser protection, because especially with some of these offshore books, they offer good teaser odds. And so people look to play teasers on these games, and the spread for the Falcons and the Packers is so low because sometimes they're looking to protect against having the teaser number, like say a 6-point teaser, go over that key number of 7 if it's combined with another game. And so a lot of guys I was talking to in the past 24 hours have been talking about that game in particular as being a game where it might stay low because of teaser opportunities guys might pluck.
So you're saying that, and just for the uninitiated, you could tease a game, 2 teams, you could tease them 6 points each, but both teams have to win.
Right.
So the obvious move this week would be you have the Pats at 8.5, you could tease them down to 2.5. So
Correct.
if they kick a field goal, they win.
Right.
The other obvious move would be to then take the Packers and tease them up and have them getting more than a touchdown.
Exactly. So you could do that at, let's see, I'm looking at one place right now. You could tease at Bookmaker right now. You're getting Atlanta -2, and you're getting New England 8.5.
Yep.
So you could tease that 6 points and get the Packers +8, and you can get New England -2.5. So that's a good opportunity there, but those are places that people are going to pluck as they go through the week. Also very interesting is Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So this game, for the past 5 years, or 5 games, let's look at this, hold on, there's been 5 games since 2008, you got 2009, 2010, and 1 playoffs, right?
Yeah.
3 of the games are 3 points, 1 of the games is 4 points. One of the games, it was the playoffs in 2008 when Pittsburgh won the Super Bowl, that was 9 points. There's no reason, including both games this year were 3, there's no reason that game shouldn't be 3 points. But what you're seeing is some places open at 3.5 and even money, meaning that you're getting the Steelers at 3.5 and paying, basically even money to get that number. But then you got to pay an extra 10 cents. So if you're paying 120 on odds on the Ravens at the 3.5, so to get the +3.5, it costs you more to bet that. For people who don't know, we'll explain it. So a regular bet, it's 11-10. You pay $110 for a $100 bet.
But you can buy a half point.
Right. And so essentially what's happening is you're buying a half point. Other books are saying the Steelers are -3 at -120 or -125. So if we're talking about handicappers looking for opportunities in the point spread and really looking to take advantage of the market, they're not playing the teams right now, they're playing the numbers. So some guys are buying the Steelers at, -3, -120 at the Hilton because other places are offering it -3, -130. So they're just getting a little bit of a discount. That's what they do. That's what the professional handicappers do throughout the week. They're not just playing sides and trying to find the best opportunity who's going to win or lose. They're parsing these numbers and trying to sort of pick up little pennies here and there. That's what makes this whole thing interesting.
You can't just bet on a push, right? You can't just go in and say, I want to bet on -3 on the Steelers winning by 3. Or can you?
I've never heard that before.
That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Probably be like 18-1 odds, or it would be like betting a draw in boxing.
I got to tell you, if there's no football next year, we're going to have to think of a whole new game for people to play, and that could be a great bet to have.
It's gonna be fantastic for the sports books, because what'll happen is you're gonna have a lot of people who don't know what they're doing betting on college football every week.
Totally true.
And it's going to be going really badly. Last weekend, good weekend for the books or bad weekend for the books?
Well, I think Seattle ended up probably being not as great as people expected it, thought it would be. I was getting a lot of emails. Did the books just clean up with Seattle winning? But there was A, money line problem there. But B, I think a lot of sharps came in on Seattle at the end. And, one bookmaker was telling me how you get one sharp that bets, and that could be equivalent to 2,000 guys who are squares betting. It's the limits at the Mirage are $50,000, and they'll take a $50,000 bet from a sharp at one number. They'll take that hit, and then, somebody else come in and take a different number. So, that's why there's always this balance, and you never know if the books do as well off of underdogs wins as you would think they would, because the sharps, have so much action. But let's see, what else would they have done? So
another line that I think has moved significantly as the season went along, because I can't confirm or deny that Cousin Sal had this bet, but we did it pretty early if we had done it, if gambling were legal. AFC minus 1.5 for the Super Bowl, which I think now is like over 7.
Yeah, well, look at the comparisons. It's like you got Baltimore and Pittsburgh and the Jets and the Pats. Those matchups are so full of, physical emotion and pain for these 4 teams. And then, you could honestly end up having the home field team for the NFC title be Seattle.
It's possible. They would basically have to win as double-digit underdogs 2 straight weeks, which I would love to know if that's ever happened. I'm guessing not.
Yeah. But man, it's entirely possible. So why wouldn't the line on the AFC be like that right now?
Do you subscribe to the theory that in the playoffs you do not bet on a team as an underdog unless you think they can win the game?
No, because I didn't really believe the Chiefs were going to win on Sunday. I thought it would just be a very, very close game, and I thought the Ravens would find a way to squeak it out. Obviously, I was terribly wrong. But I didn't expect the Chiefs to win, because I do think there is something to be said in the playoffs for having experience. Obviously, that didn't come to play in Seattle and New Orleans this weekend. But I just thought at the end of the day, the Ravens were going to be a team that, because they've been in so many more close games this season and they've been on the road in the playoffs before, they would have a better opportunity to win that game, although I thought it would be close. So I don't subscribe to that theory.
Because that was the main reason why I went with New Orleans last week, because it's always in my head, like, all right, I'm going to take the points, but I also think New Orleans is going to win. Those are mutually incompatible goals. And yet Seattle won the game, so I was right. But why? Why have that theory in the playoffs and not during the regular season? There's not – obviously the playoffs are different, but at a number like 10, it's like, why would you think that Seattle can't cover that number at home? Well, my whole thing is, if I'm laying 10, I really better believe in the team I'm laying 10 with. So I'm not going to lay 10 and think, man, I just hope they win by 3. I'm saying this team's much better, and they're going to kick the other team's ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to say, I think they're better, but I don't think they can win by 10, then that would naturally gravitate me toward the underdog, because if I'm not totally sold on that other team and I think, they could squeak out a close one but probably not cover big, then that means the other team has a chance to win anyway. So why not just think they can win? You know what I mean?
I guess that's true, although I don't know that the Jets have a chance to beat the Patriots this weekend, but I do think it'll be a pretty close game.
Yeah, see, that's a good example. I would not take that 8.5 unless I was fully convinced that the Jets could win that game.
Are you?
No. I think the 45-3, it's just, Aaron Schatz mentioned earlier in the part 1 of the BS report that there's some study, and there's not a lot of evidence for it, but when you have a blowout in the regular season, that team usually also wins in the playoffs. It's just the way it works. I think you'd have to go back to the 1976 Pats is the only team I can think of that they killed the Raiders, and then they ended up losing in Oakland in the AFC round 1 or round 2. I can't remember.
Well, this has already been an interesting game from a betting perspective because I haven't seen this, but one handicapper I spoke to last night told me that he saw Patriots minus 10, and he jumped on that. It was actually Teddy Cover said he saw Patriots minus 10, and he jumped on the Jets to take the plus 10. And now, pretty much across the board, accounting for sort of reduced juice and whatever, it's Patriots minus 8.5. And a bookmaker that I spoke to this morning said they were starting to see Patriots money come back on that 8.5. So this is a game that is already sort of getting a little bit of action and fluttering from that 10 to 9 to 8.5 and going back.
I think it's going to end up at 10 is where I think there's going to be late Pats money because if you watch Sanchez last week, you just can't bounce back from that.
And that's where our friend the public comes in.
Right.
Because I think that's going to come from the public.
Yes.
This is an interesting game also because, one of the most important stats is yards per rush, right, from a handicapping perspective. The Jets give up 3.6 yards per rush. So by all means, and they were phenomenal against the Colts, and I thought that their defensive game plan was great because they didn't get too tricky. They played great against the run. It was just a smart game plan for them. Against Tom Brady, with those receivers, it doesn't matter if you stop the run. He can throw 75 times in a game, and he's still going to find a way to beat you. You could put 8 men back the entire game, and he's still going to find the one guy who's open.
And there's also the Woodhead factor.
Can't stop Woodhead.
Karma.
Total karma.
Total. So who's your favorite pick this week?
What's interesting? We'll go back to the teaser for a second because I actually think it would be a fun teaser to do something with the Packers and the Pats. That to me is interesting to get Green Bay at potentially plus 8 and get the Pats at 2.5 would be great. But I also think Green Bay is going to win that game.
Mm. But could that be more of a public pick though? It seems like everybody thinks Green Bay is going to win that game.
It's all right. Squares and sharps, and I'm by no means a sharp. I think I've proven that. They can agree sometimes. They did this weekend. A lot of sharps were on Green Bay, and the public was on Green Bay.
The best thing that happened in the Sunday games was that the Seattle thing screwed up everybody's head for you can't just pick the obvious team. You got to, and then the two obvious teams won on Sunday.
Yeah, and although I don't know how obvious that the Packers really were because so many people also I know were talking about the Eagles. You could see it on Twitter. Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
Even some handicappers I spoke to on Friday were like, I just feel like Philadelphia is the better team. And if they're fully healthy, I have Philadelphia rated 3.5 points higher than the Packers.
I don't see that at all.
But it's like one of those things. Sometimes you hear all this information and, a lot of times you watch all these games, I watch all these games, and a lot of times you go on gut and feel. And so over the past 24 hours, I've had guys telling me that the Jets will stay close to the Patriots, and I just don't see how. And everything, even though I'm not studying the numbers the way they are, my gut is telling me that the Patriots kill this team.
Well, who do you know who did the best last weekend out of your Vegas
out of my
sharps?
guys?
Out of your harem of Vegas sharps.
I got an email about today who I haven't spoken to, was Prediction Machine did okay.
Oh, interesting, because so what is that, predictionmachine.com?
Yeah.
And that's one of those systems that it seems like the more evidence he gets as the season goes along, the better he does.
Well, you'd like to think because he's playing it 50,000 times.
Right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, I knew some guys who were playing Seattle pretty hard in the last 24 hours. That, to me, was the most interesting takeaway, was so many emails coming in from Sharp saying, I'm really starting to think about this Seattle team. And they all started playing that pretty hard. It was also interesting. There was a story somebody told me that a lot of money, late money, came in on the Chiefs right before the game, which was surprising to me because guys had been fading the Chiefs during the week. They had bought the Chiefs early. Then the Dwayne Bowe thing happened, and there was, everyone said he had an illness and didn't practice that Wednesday. So people started laying off the Chiefs a little bit, and now they bought back a little bit. Maybe it was because of Ed Reed's brother and Terrell Suggs, being 50-50, but there was a lot of movement in that game too.
I'll tell you, I might have to add this to my gambling manifesto, which I ignored for the Seattle-New Orleans game this week. But it seems like if something happens in the Saturday game that fits a pattern that could also be applied to a Sunday game, it sways people's reactions to that Sunday game a little bit too much. And I'm telling you, that Seahawks beating the Saints changed how people felt about that Chiefs game, because it was basically a similar blueprint. Great stadium, team that, reminds you a little bit of Seattle. Like, you don't really know what's going on with their offense, but they're able to get it done every week, and solid coaching staff, all that stuff. And I think that screwed people up.
Well, but yeah, that's sort of basic public perception gambling. If guys see the underdogs doing well, which is exactly what they saw, then that's the expectation they're going to have for the next day. It's why the Packers are getting money right now, because the public perception of the Packers is so much higher than it was 2 weeks earlier. Public perception is everything in sports betting. It's how the numbers are made, and it's why decisions are made, and it's how opportunities are found.
Well, I think we're going to see that Packers. I see that moving closer to a pick'em. Maybe Atlanta by 1 at game time?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think it lands at exactly 1. I don't know if it gets to pick, but I do think it lands at 1. And I don't think it goes to 3 at all. It's only going to get closer to pick.
Pat's at 9.5 or 10.
Pat's at 9.5 or 10. I think the Bears probably end up at 9.5 or 10.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks. I think late money comes in. I think that ends up at 9. That'd be my prediction.
Okay. I know that a lot of guys would like to bet against the Seahawks. A lot of guys that I've spoken to would like to find a way to bet on the Bears, but this is why wise guys are wise guys. They don't just bet for the sake of betting. They bet when they find a price that they like in this particular game, and they don't like the price that it's at right now. I think they'd like it better once it moved a little bit lower. They don't trust the Bears to have a 10-point blowout. So I don't doubt that there might be some money coming in Seattle, and if there is, then I think wise guys will jump on it if this line moves a little bit lower.
And then Ravens, Steelers.
I don't think it moves. I think what you see is the number staying at 3, and it's either, the juice is either minus 120, minus 125, minus 130, or it stays at 3.5 and at, even money, which is the same thing as the 3 minus 120.
I thought it was at 3 right now.
It is. At some places it's at 3 minus 120, and other places have it at 3.5 even money, and they've got Baltimore at plus 3.5, minus 120, 130, that kind of thing.
Ooh, it's kind of enticing.
Yeah, but it's the same thing as betting 3 minus 120. That's when you talk about sort of the gambler's math. That's how they find their opportunity is, in those 10-set differences in the line.
I think that game possibly could go to 2.5 by Sunday. Because the more people who are going to talk about Pittsburgh's offensive line, how banged up it is.
I would be shocked because 3 is such a key number. Not only generally you're going to get 15 to 20% of games landing on 3, but in this matchup, how many 3 of the last 5 have gone to 3 points. So what's that? 60% have landed on 3. So if they go off the 3 for any amount of time and somebody takes that, then all these books are vulnerable for whatever the number is on each side of the 3. And so they're going to end up losing money. Whereas here, they're at the 3, they're going to do everything they possibly can to stay on that 3.
I don't think the line's going to move. I'm saying if it moved, I think it would move toward Baltimore's direction, not Pittsburgh. Yeah, I don't think that line budges from 3 unless it goes down.
But wasn't that a great response?
It was a great response. I agreed with it.
Okay, good.
Hold on, one last question, then you have to go.
But I don't know if I agree because I think all the public money is going to come on Pittsburgh.
Really? I disagree.
Okay.
I think I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, maybe because we disagree. Maybe it'll stay at 3. How did the guy who won the Hilton contest do last week?
Oh, I don't. You know what? I haven't even spoken to him to see if he played. I don't think he'll ever bet again. I think he's just so happy that he walked away with that, that win plus the extra $100,000 that he hedged and won that Sunday. That he's probably still shaking.
You talked to him on your podcast last week, and he recounted the whole story of $207,000 for the Hilton contest, which he then decided to hedge with a $100,000 3-team tease or parlay?
No. He won. What happened was he took $75,000 from his college education fund, knowing and he went to Vegas planning on hedging, knowing that he was in first place and there were only certain scenarios in which he could come in second. So he did a 3-team parlay for the 1:00 games on Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and Tampa. No, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Tampa. And he ended up winning that parlay. And so he ended up winning. He bet $10,000, won $52,000. Then in the afternoon, he needed Chicago. He needed the Packers to win by 7. They win by 7. He wins the whole thing. So he decided to hedge another $33,000 on the Bears plus 11 because with the Hilton contests, for those who don't know, the lines come out on Tuesday. And so by Sunday, they've moved quite a bit on some games. And this line for the Packers-Bears was at 6.5 Packers on Tuesday. By Sunday, it was Packers minus 11. So this guy had a 4-point opportunity to hedge. So he bet the Bears plus 11 for $33,000. If the Packers win by 7 or more, he wins the Hilton contest. If the Packers win between 7 and 10, he wins the Hilton contest and that $33,000.
Amazing.
He won it both, so he walked away with $300,000. He told me he felt like a drug dealer going back to his bank. He deposited like $200,000 into his bank after taking $75,000 out 24 hours earlier.
Unbelievable.
It was
And
a great story.
I could have done a very, very low budget version of that because going into that Sunday night game, I just could have hedged and had Seattle and tried to guarantee an extra $5,000 either way. And
you know what? He did that too. He was in Vegas. He had won all this money. He was exhausted, like his body ached. He said he didn't have fun that entire day, like he was shaking and physically in agony the entire day. At one point, he's standing behind all his buddies and he's on the carpet, like, where's Richard? And one guy points to his back and he's like literally in the fetal position on the carpet. Can't watch the final 2 minutes of that Packers game when the Bears are driving to tie it. And he gets back to his hotel and he realizes that he can make a hedge on Seattle and win an extra $5,000. He sprinted down to a sports book and he did it. He won another $5,000.
The Midler. That's what we should call him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so exactly. I'm thrilled for the guy. He was a great guy, and it's a phenomenal story. I was really happy for him.
All right, cool. Chad Millman, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
All right, that's it for the mega playoff podcast. If you missed part 1, check it out on iTunes or ESPN.com. That was part 2. We're going to have some more podcasts coming later this week. Until then.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.